I want to know what inspired you to write your book.
Yeah.
Like what was the inspiration behind it, and talk a little bit about the information that's in there. That's so, it's strange to say this, but counter what is considered mainstream advice around things like health and longevity.
Well, we've been trying to fight an obesity epidemic for the last 50 years. And when you have the problem correct, you assume that we get solutions.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 50 years, we've gotten sicker, fatter, weaker as a country. And in my mind, we have to ask a different question and a better question. And this book came out of personal experience. I don't think that I've ever told you guys this. In fact, I know that I haven't. I did my fellowship in geriatrics. So geriatrics is end of life, 65 and up. I did it at WashU. And at the time, I was forced to do geriatrics. So I actually don't think that I've ever really publicly talked about this, but I went to WashU to study nutritional sciences. So the goal was I was going to do a fellowship in nutritional sciences. The catch was I was going to have to see people at the end of their life. And you can imagine the impact that would have day after day in the nursing home, on the weekends, seeing 30 patients a day that are at the end of life. And then in the evenings, doing weight management clinic. And in the early mornings, doing muscle biopsies and cardiovascular testing, doing research on obesity. And I became really attached to one of these participants. And she was a mom of 3, trying to lose the same 20 pounds after her last 3 kids. And I imaged her brain. So we were looking at the interface between body composition and brain function. And I imaged her brain, and her brain looked like the beginning of an Alzheimer's brain. She was in her mid-50s. And I knew what the trajectory of her life was going to be. And whose fault was it? It was our fault. Because the information that we had been telling her was eat the food guide pyramid, further reduce your calories, do more cardiovascular activity, don't train, don't address skeletal muscle, do all the things to treat obesity. And then I had this aha moment. And I realized that the sickest patients all had one thing in common. It wasn't that they were over fat. It was that they had unhealthy muscle or they were under-muscled. And this was the problem. And then if we began to shift the focus and we really cared about human health and doing the right thing for people, then we have to shift the conversation and begin to ask the right question. And that's where this concept of muscle-centric medicine came from.
What is it about muscle that makes it so protective as an organ? I think the obvious thing people would think about is, well, I need mobility. I need to be able to move around. So that's why I need muscle. But it goes a lot deeper than that, right?
And we need to all look jacked and tan like Sal, which is really what people think about. They think about muscle. Do not lie. People think about the 80s with the spray tan and the muscle tees.
That's the problem.
It is still bro science. No offense to the dudes in the room.
Right.
But it is not. Skeletal muscle is an organ system. It is the largest endocrine organ in the body. It trumps the heart. It trumps the thyroid. Dare I say it even trumps the gonads. Skeletal muscle, from the framework of medicine and health, this should come as no shock, is the site of glucose disposal, right? It is the primary site of insulin resistance. So if we were to take a step back, what are we all wanting? We are all wanting to age well. You guys look great for 25. We are all wanting to age well and increase the quality of our life over time. So everybody listening has to be interested in outcomes. What do we know affect individuals? We are seeing, if you look at the CDC, we are seeing, causes of, mortality, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, cancer, all of which are rooted in what?
Insulin.
Skeletal muscle.
And skeletal muscle, yeah.
Skeletal muscle and obesity are not on that list.
Right.
Wait. As a cause of death, skeletal muscle is not on that list. So when we think about skeletal muscle, these are underlying principles that directly affect our capacity to age and have optimal wellness and vitality and strength. Skeletal muscle as a glucose disposal unit. Insulin resistance, we've all talked and all heard about insulin. Insulin is this peptide hormone released from the pancreas, as you well know. Sal, I've heard you talk about it. Moves blood glucose from the blood into cells, right? Well, insulin resistance, when you require more insulin for the glucose that you have, what do you think one of the first tissues affected is? Skeletal muscle. Decades before. There's information, some of the earlier studies out of Yale, an 18-year-old, quote, healthy sedentary, no visual excess body fat or abdominal fat, showing insulin resistance in skeletal muscle at 18. This begins decades earlier in skeletal muscle before we're even seeing adiposity, before we're seeing, excess subcutaneous fat. So we have to address skeletal muscle as the primary site for all things metabolic.